Hello again, everyone. Today we're going to do the dotted texture, which is with the dragon that's in your manual. And this is what I would call the positive, in the sense that we're putting ink onto the paper in series of little dots. So you're going to need your G40, G43, G46 in colorless blender. The first thing I'm going to do is color the entire area that I want to have texture, and that's going to be on the body of the dragon, including his little feet, and I'm using the lightest color of G40. And if you recall, this is so that I'm not having to go back in later and cover up all the white paper that I may have missed. The next step is I'm going to dot in some G43, which is the midtone, and I don't want to start right with my darkest color because I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out. So safer bet is to start with a midtone and place a series of dots in the shadows, and I'm using an overhead light source. And then I'm going to, oh, here you go. So the shorter that the pen is on the paper, the smaller the dot. The longer you hold it, the bigger the dot. And I'm going to do a series of small dots, and then that third one which you saw, which was like the dot and drag. Now I'm going to come in with the lightest color and start to work up more towards the light source. And if you remember, each time you put color, the same color on top is going to make it just slightly darker. So that's why you can see G40 in those dots, even though G40 was placed all over the paper. Now I'm going to come in with one of the darker colors of G46. Now that I've been able to assess where I wanted my shadows to fall, I'm going to come back in right over the G43 for the most part with the darkest color, and again doing series of dots. Some are small little dots, some are a little bit of a drag dot, for lack of a better term, and I'm working up towards the light source. So I'm going to work away from the light source and then move forward. It just gives you a little bit more control of what you want to accomplish. And here is G43, the midtone. And again, I'm just doing series of dots, dot, 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 dot. You might get sick of dots. If it starts to look like you're creating measles, which I've heard sometimes in class, it just means you have to add a little bit more color. And it's not necessarily a process that happens in 3 seconds. It just takes some time to build up the color and in the texture that's a little more appealing to the eye. So I'm coming back in with G29, I think that's what I did, G29, which is again a darker color, and darkening up that shaded area just a bit. Oh no, that was G46 again. I apologize. And then I'm going to blend that out again with G43. So on this sample that I'm giving you in the video, I'm doing at least 2 passes of the color of going from dark to light and building up towards the light source. So if you don't get it exactly the first time, it's not meant to be done perfectly the first time. And if you do, woohoo, you did it. So feel free to take the time that you need and that you want to build that color and to build the texture in the way that you want. Now I'm coming in with the colorless blender, and the purpose behind the colorless blender is to kind of meld and shift those dots in the colors so that they look less like measles, or that you've made series of dots, but more like texture blending into each other. So I'm not holding the pen on the paper for a long period of time. I'm just randomly dotting around, and I often will step back and look to see what areas don't look blended or that it's standing out that doesn't look right, and then I'll come in with the colorless blender pen and focus and concentrate a little bit more on that particular area. So always take your stop, look at your work, see what's going on, and go back in and fix it or adapt it and change to what you need. So I'm going to go in with some G43. I thought that there was a little bit too much of a gap between the dark and the light. And working up towards the light source. And G40 one more time to again make it a little smoother between the midtone and the lightest, and just doing some final touches with the colorless blender. There's my G29, which is the darkest, to my eye, the darkest green in the Copic collection, and just adding in some of the deepest shadows to make it stand out just a little bit more. And I'm going to need to soften that a little bit. So instead of using the colorless blender, I'm going to come in here shortly with my midtone, which is G43, and soften it that way. If I added in G46, it then creates a bigger gap between 46 and 43, and then I'd have to repeat the entire process again where it's not necessary. So if you have a darker color and you want it to blend, come in with your midtone, and that'll help soften it without having to do another layer of color. So here's the enlarged, updated looking dragon. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you what it looks like with the colorless blender onto ink, and how long you hold it affects the size of the dot and how much the ink is dispersed. My camera is trying to decide if it really wants to focus on this green blob or not, but here I'm coming in with the colorless blender again, still playing around with the camera, trying to get it right. I'm going to hold it even longer this time. And you can see when I'm up on the tip, the shape that it gives me is more of a dot. If you lay the marker on its side, you're going to have more of an oblong shape, which has its purpose, and it's wonderful for creating different types of texture and a different look. And you can see what happens when you use your dots and how those meld together, and the slight differential in the looks between the two ways to lay that on the paper. So have a great day.